What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Urban FinTech at the G Spot Studios channel, where we try to make finance and technology sexy. Boy, oh boy, do we have so much today to talk about. I have a conglomerate of videos that I wanted to bring to you of different people from various walks of life, but respected experts in their own right. And everything from the Doomsday Clock, which is real, evil sentient AI, space exploration, the human brain, and Google wanting to create a digital god is what is on the show today. I am going to just share my thoughts prior to introducing you to some of these videos that we are going to take a look at. So stay tuned. So Israel is at war with Asimov. There is a lot going on in the world, and oh my God, where do we even begin? At the same time, there's so much going on with technology. It's one of those things that is at the forefront. A lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people are fearful of it. And so I wanted to just kind of delve a little bit deeper into it with some of the thoughts from some of the experts in the field. This first clip is by the Y-Files, one of my favorite YouTube channels, one of my favorite shows to watch. And AJ is the host, and Hecklefish, and they do a great job of just really laying out different situations, different science phenomena and such, and they bring the receipts, honey. Okay, the receipts, cha-ching. And then he also gives another perspective, and so I like that balance with the show. And so this is the clip from AJ.
In 1947, a group of scientists, including Albert Einstein, created the Doomsday Clock. It's a symbol for communicating how close humanity is to total annihilation. And right now, the Doomsday Clock is at 90 seconds to midnight, the closest to midnight we've ever been.
Oh boy, this episode is gonna be dark, huh?
Yeah, it kinda is.
Yeah.
The group behind the Doomsday Clock is called the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. It was founded in 1945 in order to educate and warn the public about the dangers of nuclear technology. And this was a subject the founders were uniquely qualified to cover. Many of them worked on the Manhattan Project, which developed the world's first nuclear weapons. The Doomsday Clock's initial setting was 7 minutes to midnight, and every January since, the time of the clock is updated. At the height of the Cold War, the Doomsday Clock reached 2 minutes to midnight. The furthest from midnight the clock has ever been is 17 minutes in 1991. The United States and the Soviet Union had just signed the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, which reduced the amount of long-range nuclear weapons in both countries. Unfortunately, the Doomsday Clock has been moving in the wrong direction ever since. In 2020, the clock was set to 100 seconds to midnight. And in January of 2023, the Doomsday Clock reached a new all-time low, 90 seconds to midnight. Over the years, along with nuclear threats, the scientists also started considering the dangers of new technology when setting the Doomsday Clock. This year's setting was based on global conflict, cyber terrorism, and most of all, the rise of artificial intelligence. According to experts, this is the perfect recipe for the end of the world.
So that was some pretty heavy shit, right? Like, oh my God, how do we even take that in? How do we begin to understand what could potentially happen in the next few years? What could happen next week? And then I would imagine with this current situation in Israel that's taken place, the Gaza Strip, all these different things that are happening, that Doomsday Clock, honey, we might be about 15 minutes to, okay? 15 minutes to the hour. This next clip is by Mustafa Suleyman. He is the co-founder of DeepMind at Google. And what they do at DeepMind is they research and they create artificial intelligence. And so he's seen the back end of this kind of technology. And in a later clip, we'll see from Joe Rogan, who does an excerpt on Elon Musk, that Google is trying to create some kind of God-like entity. So I imagine that Mustafa has seen a lot in his day. And so he is a little bit more apprehensive about AI. But let's go ahead and take a look.
Are you uncomfortable talking about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty wild, right?
Mustafa Suleyman,
the billionaire founder of Google's AI technology.
He's played a key role in the development of AI from its first critical steps.
In 2020, I moved to work on Google's chatbot. It was the ultimate technology. We can use them to turbocharge our knowledge unlike anything else.
Why didn't they release it?
We were nervous. we were nervous. Every organization is going to race to get their hands on intelligence, and that's going to be incredibly disruptive. This technology can be used to identify cancerous tumors as it can to identify a target on the battlefield. A tiny group of people who wish to cause harm are going to have access to tools that can instantly destabilize our world. That's the challenge, how to stop something that can cause harm or potentially kill. That's where we need containment.
Do you think that it is containable?
It has to be possible.
Why?
It must be possible.
Why must it be?
Because otherwise it contains us.
Yet you chose to build a company in this space. Why did you do that?
Because I want to design an AI that's on your side. I honestly think that if we succeed, everything is a lot cheaper. It's going to power new forms of transportation, reduce the cost of healthcare.
But what if we fail?
The really painful answer to that question is that...
Do you ever get sad about it?
Yeah, it's intense.
So I had the opportunity to actually watch that entire podcast. And when I tell you, honey, Mustafa is stressed out. He is stressed out. He expressed it on the show. And I can't even grasp probably what he has seen, what he has witnessed, what he understands, the capabilities in terms of artificial intelligence. So my hat's off to that brother. I salute you. Okay. All right. Next, y'all, we have Joe Rogan with his excerpt of Elon Musk. And Elon Musk is saying that Google, they are trying to create the God entity, the God digital version.
Pinnacle of technology.
And they're having slumber parties.
The perception was that Larry
they're
was
very
not
aware.
taking AI safety seriously enough.
What did he say about it?
He really seemed to be one sort of digital superintelligence, basically digital God, if you will, as soon as possible.
He wanted that?
Yes. He's made many public statements over the years that the whole goal of Google is what's called AGI, artificial general intelligence, or artificial superintelligence. And I agree with him that there's great potential for good, but there's also potential for bad. And so if you've got some radical new technology, you want to try to take a set of actions that maximize the probability it will do good and minimize the probability it will do bad things.
Yes.
It can't just be hell for leather. Let's just go, barreling forward and, hope for the best. And then at one point, I said, well, what about, we're going to make sure humanity's okay here. And
Michael laugh.
And then he called me a speciesist.
Now, I imagine that some of what Elon spoke about is what has Mustafa, the co-founder of DeepMind at Google, so stressed out. But speaking of Elon and just so much that he's doing to revolutionize the technology game, it is unbelievable. And again, I always say this, people like him, people hate him. It's just one of those things. But the thing about Elon is that a lot of people think he's a space traveler, honey. And he very well may be, unless he's an alien. Either way, it's still kind of one and the same. But this next gentleman that we're going to take a look at actually is a science fiction writer. He's written over 200 books in his day. This interview is from 1982, y'all. 40 plus years ago, this guy was talking about artificial intelligence and also space. And so his name is Isaac Asimov, and just a brilliant guy, ahead of his time. Again, could be from another time, but you be the judge. Let's check it out.
To set up space stations, to build solar power stations, to have laboratories and factories that can do things in space that are difficult or impossible to do on Earth, and eventually to have space settlements in which thousands of people can be housed more or less permanently.
Do you think that's actually going to happen, or is that just it's possible to do it, but do you think it's actually going to happen in these next several years?
Well, as to whether it's actually going to happen, that's the choice that humanity has to make. We can decide not to do it, but we can also decide to do it because the technology is there. It would be expensive, require a great deal of time, energy, manpower, etc., but on the whole, not as much expense and effort and emotional input as, for instance, to maintain our military machines year after year. If we could put in $500 billion a year on space instead of on military machines, there are almost no limits to what we can do.
But what's the point of it? What's the point of doing all that?
Well, for one thing, we'll gain new sources of energy, new sources of materials, we'll gain new knowledge, we'll make new technologies possible. We'll be moving out from an Earth which is relatively worn out by thousands of years of human depredations, not vicious depredations necessarily, just the fact we've been living here and making use of its resources, into new territory, and be able to build a larger and more elaborate civilization, and one which does not depend upon the resources of one world.
All right, speaking of what might happen, though, back here on Earth, the computers. Computers have really come into their own in these last few years. What do you see ahead for the computer age? Have we crested on that one as well?
Oh, no. The computer is at the center of everything. The computer is a problem-solving device. It is a technique that makes it possible to do things that would be utterly impossible without it. We couldn't reach the moon without the computer. We require the computer to handle these spaceships that we're making use of. Everything we do in space, we won't be able to do without banks of computers thinking faster than we possibly can. And in the same way, the advance of robots depends entirely upon the computer. In fact, the simplest way of defining a robot is as a computerized machine.
Do you see a time where computers at the basic human level in homes and that sort of thing, that everybody will have a computer, will have to have computers in order to exist and make it down here on Earth?
It's not even a matter of having to have it. They'll want to. When television first came in 1948, it was easy to predict that everybody would want to have a television set simply because it was primarily used for entertainment. Well, computers are going to be necessary in the house to do a great many things, some in the way of entertainment, some in the way of making life a little easier, and everyone will want it. And the home computer is the wave of the future.
What do you see? You mentioned robots, and we saw at the beginning that there were a lot of scary things involved in the 20s when predicting the coming of the robot. What do you see the robot's place being in our future?
Well, it's scary, but not for the reasons they always saw it. They saw the robots as being somehow imitation human beings that were vicious and soulless. That's not so. We now know that robots are simply machines that do what they're told to do, but they replace human beings. It's not that they kill them, but they kill their jobs. They'll create more jobs than they kill, but they'll be different jobs. And the people whose jobs are lost may not easily be educable, there it is, into new jobs. So that we are going to have to accept an important role, society as a whole, in making sure that the transition period from the pre-robotic technology to the post-robotic technology is as painless as possible. We have to make sure that people aren't treated as though they're used-up dish rags, that they have to be allowed to live and retain their self-respect. Work has to be found for them. Those who can be educated into new jobs should be. Those who can be transferred, fitted in somewhere else, should be. This is not going to be easy, and the transition period will be starting almost at once.
Finally, let me ask you this, in a word, Mr. Asimov. When you look ahead to the future, do you see the world in optimistic terms? I mean, you see good things ahead. Would you classify yourself as being an optimistic futurist?
I'm a hopeful optimist. In other words, I hope things will be optimistic. It is up to humanity to make the decisions. We can decide to specialize in hatred and suspicion and end up with a nuclear war which will destroy everything, or we can decide to cooperate and overcome our suspicions and hatreds, in which case I see an endlessly receding horizon with no foreseeable way of coming to an end to greatness.
Thank you. The threat of nuclear war, it's something that has very much been in the public mind in the last several months, as you know. I want to start with you and ask what each of you, when you look in your crystal balls, what do you see in that regard?
Well, with regard to nuclear war, the first thing I see is that 40 years has passed and no one has had the nerve to start one. I see a public opinion which every year becomes more alive to the dangers thereof and more insistent that the risks be lowered. It's just a question as to whether the general public perception of nuclear war as something that must not happen can overcome what I might call the conventional military mind.
Of all the things that you see in the future, what excites you the most as a person? I mean, just really turns you on when you think about if this wonderful thing could happen.
Oh, what excites me most is the thought of an understanding of the human brain far deeper than any we have now. I'm hoping that by the use of computers, that perhaps by the construction of artificial intelligence, we can be able to understand the most complex conglomeration of matter that we know of, the human brain, which is at one and the same time our greatest hope and our greatest danger. It's in the brain that all advances can be planned. It's in the brain that all dangers can be expected. And I want to understand that.
So I thank you all for joining me today on my quest to understand artificial intelligence. I hope this helped you a little bit. Who knows? There's so much going on. I pray that we all are safe and we all are healthy and that we all can be kind to one another. Let me know what you think about artificial intelligence. Do you think that it's sexy, or is it just smoke and screen energy, honey? See you next time.